Hello everyone, Travis Gafford here with Noah Whinston, CEO of Immortals in the Yahoo Esports studio to talk a little bit about the team. Now, as we speak, the team is currently undefeated, but before we get into any of that, I'd love to know a little bit about your background, how you got involved in this, what really made you interested in doing the esports, company, team, etc., and really where it all began for you.
Sure. So I've always been a geek. And I've always liked being involved in a business way and kind of geek niches or subcultures. So the first business I ever started was a Magic the Gathering e-commerce store, which eventually developed into a physical store location in Chicago. I did a lot of traveling for that, went to a lot of tournaments, did a lot of online sales. Eventually I had to stop doing that because I couldn't handle that in school at the same time. And so that was kind of my first exposure into digging deep into the business end of something I had just enjoyed as kind of a casual participant before. And just the way that I am, I usually am not satisfied with just being a casual participant. That contents me for 2 or 3 months, and then I feel the need to kind of dig in on a deeper level, and that's pretty much exactly what happened with esports.
Is that like a feeling of, wow, I could be doing so much cool stuff in this, or, oh, I could do that better? Is that what really drives you to get involved in this stuff?
Well, not so much. At first, it's always more of an educational thing. So I'll see something and then I'll ask, why does it work that way? And then I have to dig deeper to find out why it works that way. And then it just goes further and further along the chain until I think I have a pretty good picture of how, an ecosystem works. Yeah. And from there, after I've educated myself, that's when I can kind of see where are the holes in that ecosystem, where are things being done well, where are things not being done well, and where could I potentially help improve them.
I just wanted to sort of talk to you about the team, the company. I mean, it's only been, how long ago did this whole thing start up for you?
I'd say it started towards the tail end of last summer, so August, September kind of range.
But even in a public sense, it's been even far less than that,
yeah,
right?
Probably only public since October.
And then funny to think that the team, if you consider the start of the team from the time it started playing competitively, it's about 5 or 6 weeks old.
Yep. 5 weeks old at this point.
Yeah. And already I think Immortals is starting to become a brand that a lot of people are knowing in the scene and getting a lot of recognition because as we film this, it's actually a situation where you guys are undefeated in the LCS. Was there any chance that you could have predicted that at the start? Did you feel like you could be this successful in such a short time? Definitely
felt like it was a possibility to be that successful, but of course it's impossible to expect what happens. Yeah. And I also want to stress that, just because we started undefeated, it doesn't mean my expectations for the team are any different. I told the guys at the beginning of the season, I'm happy with top 3. Still happy with top 3.
So the funny part of this is that I actually met you before you were even doing any of the stuff with Immortals. And on that very first day, you kind of hinted to me that you were thinking about getting more involved on the team side of things. This was actually over last summer, I believe, whenever you were
in San Francisco.
In San Francisco, when you were working with Vulcan.
Mm-hmm.
So how did that come about? How did you end up doing stuff at Vulcan?
So in between getting super involved in Magic the Gathering and then getting super involved on the team side of esports, I spent probably about 2 years getting pretty involved on kind of the sports betting and daily fantasy sports side, which I did for hockey, I did for basketball. And during that time, I was just watching esports because I enjoyed it. And so when Vulcan and Alpha Draft launched, I was like, man, this is awesome. I can combine 2 things I already liked. Yeah. So after the first, I think, 3 months that Vulcan was in operation, I was the top earner on Vulcan. I was very good at doing it, largely because I am pretty passionate about sports analytics and developed an algorithmic model for betting on Vulcan.
And would you be able to share that algorithmic model with the greater
whole
public?
Point is that the algorithmic model stays secret so that, in the event that I end up living below a bridge somewhere, I have a source of income to fall back on.
Sneaking into a public library to use the internet to create money off of Vulcan. So upon starting there, did you have already early aspirations to get involved on the team or organization side, or was that something that developed over your time there?
Yeah, so before that summer, I had been kind of thinking about what I wanted to be doing, not just in a personal sense, but in a professional sense too, because I was going into my senior year of college. That's when you have to find employment.
Yeah.
And so one thing I had been thinking before the summer is kind of self-funding a challenger team with my Vulcan and Magic the Gathering winnings. And while that was a possibility, I also knew that's a huge effort to undertake, especially if I'm still finishing school. There's a pretty low chance of success, getting through the challenger system and being promoted is very difficult to do.
Yeah, it's a gamble for sure.
It's a big gamble, especially, you know, if you're doing it on your own and not as part of a more professional group. So while that was something I was interested in doing, I also knew that there were a lot of risks inherent to that. And so while I was at Vulcan, I definitely talked to Ali and Murti a lot about this because as the former owners of Team Vulcan and the LCS, they had that experience before. Albeit, you know, Season 3 was a very different world than we were in Season 5 and Season 6. So they were really helpful both in kind of, you know, showing me potential pitfalls, showing me the good things that they did, and also connecting me with people who were similarly interested in starting teams. It was a process to convince them. It was a process to demonstrate that not only do I know what I'm talking about, but I'm also able to execute on what I'm talking about.
Was there any part during those times where you were like, oh God, what am I getting myself into? Like, this might be like a huge endeavor, and then suddenly I'm going to be held responsible for the success of it, or any moments of, you know, concern along those lines?
I got one of those moments coming up in just a few seconds.
Okay,
now,
yeah, exactly.
Of course, it's a huge, you know, it's a huge undertaking, and of course it's scary, and of course it's super stressful because not only it's super scary and super stressful because my success is not only dependent on what I can do, right? There's still massive levels of like industry growth that need to happen to bring esports to the point where I think it can be.
So at what point in time did you start to know, like, all right, I've got all the backing I need, I have like the players in play that I need to start the company, and when did that sort of transition into, well, now we got to create a team?
So when we raised the money, first step, obviously, can't hire players, can't hire coaches before you have your LCS slot. So we bought our LCS slot from Team 8, and from there we were able to kind of absorb the parts of that organization that we thought would be helpful. One of the best pickups out of there was Dodo, Jun Kang, who's now our player manager, super great guy, was basically acting as a manager on Team 8 while he was also playing on the team. So he has a ton of experience in like what players need, how to help them, how to cook awesome Korean food.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
Yeah, it's delicious. I'm enjoying it probably more than I should. And from then we hired coaches. So we brought on Dylan Falco, who was our strategic coach. For me, I think I have pretty solid opinions about the game, but I also recognize that my opinions are not universal, and I really needed people who were able to be a sounding board for me, people who weren't afraid to like tell me, no, this is a bad idea. And so I'm really glad that I brought on that kind of coaching staff first before building the roster, because I think that it was a lot more important to me to have the right infrastructure around the team, because without the right infrastructure, no matter what players you bring on, it's not going to do well.
So is that basically what the company looks like then? 3 people, you and those 2 guys?
We also picked up Robert Yip during this time period.
Okay.
So Robert is we call him our performance coach. We brought him in from Ireland. He has a master's degree in sports and exercise psychology. He like runs our nutrition. He runs our personal training, so he makes sure the players are exercising the right way. And he does all the sports psychology for us too.
How did you find out about him? Because the other ones obviously were already existing in the NA scene to an extent. So.
Well, Robert had already been active in esports. He was acting as a sports psychologist, I believe, 1 or 2 years ago for Team Liquid's StarCraft players, and then had coached Origin during the summer of 2015.
So now you have yourself and these 3 individuals who are coming in to, you know, help build the team. What is actually involved in building this team at this point? Is it like running a fantasy team, or how does this work?
Yeah, it's a lot like kind of building a fantasy team. So I don't want to go into the details of like which players we acquired in which order. I just don't think that would be too beneficial for me to talk about. But we definitely heavily prioritized bringing on like very strong North American players and then finding the right international players to mesh with them.
Sure. And I mean, you don't want to talk about the order, but can you maybe say if you got your first choice or how you went about this? I mean, was there a moment where you're like, oh, I almost got this guy and he went away, and then later on maybe you find out like, oh, Wild Turtle's actually available?
We were in a heavy pursuit for Faker.
Okay, Faker.
You know, we'll settle for
as a domestic talent, Faker?
Of course.
I don't know if that's how that works, actually, no.
I'll just say that, you know, I can't imagine a roster that I would have been happier to put together than this one.
All right, that's fair and safe. Be sure to check out part 2 of our interview with Noah Whinston as we discuss the current happenings with Immortals.
What do I call them? I like call them my esports babies.